Well, we're moving. We're moving on to a whole different genre now. We're still in color theory, but what we're working on now is analogous colors. So, what exactly is analogous colors? Well, analogous simply means similar to. So, when you're actually working with colors, you're actually working with colors that are similar to each other. A good example of that would be a sunset. It's not just all one color, it's several different colors put together. So you're going to be combining a lot of these together. Yeah, for example, let's bring in the color wheel. There we go. Now, take a look at the color wheel here. Now, we've broken the color wheel up in several different areas. So the first part is going to be cool colors. All these colors here are in the same color value. So using these from all those colors there are analogous. You can also do warm, cool. Now there's a little controversy between there, but as long as they're in that same value, you can cool warm colors and warm cool colors. It takes a little practice to do that. Then there's cool colors. Take my suit for instance. I'm in the cool color, not cool as in cool, but cool colors, as you would say in that genre. Now there would be other people who would disagree with me on that, and other artists who would say, no, you're more monochromatic, and I would disagree and say no. For instance, my shirt, my vest, and my slacks are pretty much in the green area. My tie is blue, and my blazer is a dark blue. But because they're so close in value, they almost look like they're blue, so they would say, no, that's monochromatic. Hence the reason why it's called color theory and not color law. Now there's some very obvious things, like take for instance these two, AJ7 and AJ3. AJ3 is green, AJ7 is blue. They're both in the cool color genre. So as you can see, they have the same value, but one is blue and one is green. They are analogous. They're close in the same color. So utilizing that is something that you can see. We're going to also utilize that with the other characters, like the other guys zipping by. Yeah, there we go. The skitter. The different colors. You'll be seeing more of the rollerbots as time goes on, and you'll get to recognize their colors. There's also some other characters you're going to get to know, such as the ones behind me here. That's them. These are called the Librarians of Historical Culture and Knowledge. Let's say goodbye to them for a while, and we will... These characters here are called the Elite Seven. Now, you're going to get to know their colors and how they work together and all that other good stuff. All right. So, for now, we're starting to see how we're working more advanced and getting into color. So we're going to study this part in the analogous field and how it's important to understand what you're going to be working with and how you're going to use those, and how you can even bring another color from the opposite end and bring that in to kind of add as a highlight or an accent to that color to make your work look a lot more exciting. Analogous colors can be complicated, and yet at the same time they can be simple. Like I said, it's not an easy field. Color theory can be complicated, and it starts to get more and more complicated as we go along. All right, let's move on this episode of Artifacts and Color Theory.
For more awesome content, like and subscribe now. Do it now, or I'll hunt you down. Smash like.
How colorful.
Your true colors. Any color.
Just pick a color.
What?
Comes in a wide variety of colors.
Colors?
This color is connected to that color.
Oh, I love the night. How beautiful this is. Wow. You know, the night is absolutely gorgeous. And tonight, we have a special event happening. That's right. What a better way to explain about analogous colors than using the aurora borealis? Isn't it beautiful? The aurora borealis, a phenomenon done when solar flares hit our magnetic field and create a spark of light and all this other kind of stuff that happens. But in this case, I live in Virginia, and there was such a big solar flare that when it hit the Earth's magnetic field, it actually created the aurora borealis to go further south. And we get to see some of this magic here. God's wonderful light show. Yeah, next to lightning, of course. But this is way better. Well, the reason I'm using this is because here is a perfect example when I said about reds and blues being in an analogous area. This is the same thing. Although you're seeing reds in the northern lights or aurora borealis, the color value is very close to the blues because they start to switch to purples and they're also cool. At the same time, the blues seem to warm up a little bit. So in these values, you have analogous colors, despite the fact they're on the opposite end of the color. Well, not quite completely opposite, but close to that. And that creates an awesome phenomenon. Out here, you get to hear the owls and the bats, which I love. Love bats, love owls. They're great. Whether they be the owls that I've made, such as Olive and Otis, or the Mexican chocolate cruising by. Anyway, I'm getting off track, and I'm notorious for doing that. All right, so let's talk about analogous. Analogous colors tend to set the mood. Well, look at the mood that we have here in this background. It's subtle, yet romantic, yet exciting. And because understanding how to work these colors and working analogous can actually shift the mood from, well, let's say an illustration to effective an emotion. We're going to talk about that. Well, let's use some examples. And whatever better to use examples are the masters. And let's start off with Vincent van Gogh. It's not Van Gogh. It's not the way it's pronounced. It's Van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh and his painting of the sunflowers. It's a beautiful piece. And it took him a year to do that. 1888 to 1889. It wasn't done in a half hour. It was done. It had taken some time to do this. But let's take a look at what his colors are like. His colors here are very warm on the spectrum. And you can see on this color wheel where he's used that. It emotes a feeling of warmth and emotion. Now, unfortunately, Vincent wasn't really understood. Van Gogh thought that he was crazy. He didn't know how to paint, but what he was actually painting was what he was seeing. Another example is one of his most popular, other than the lilies, is this one here. Starry Night, kind of like what we have behind us. The Starry Night was misinterpreted. All these circles and swirls. That's not what he was trying to capture. He was capturing the breeze, the movement of the night. And at the same time, he was using an analogous way to capture that night. Now look at the opposites between these two. You have something warm and you have something cool. But you're emoting two different emotional feelings altogether. Something tranquil and something warm and almost loving and giving and bright, exciting. These analogous colors are able to work together to create and tap into the emotion of what you're seeing here. Well, let's move on to another one. Claude Monet. He was also an impressionist. And this one here, which is called the Waterloo Bridge. And this one took him 2 years to do. It was 1889 to 1901. And this one here took a while to get through. Anyhow, if you look closely at it, the colors here are pretty close to what we have on this here tonight. There are some reds, but they are turned into purple. And what he was capturing, this was like during the time of the industrial age. And in Europe, a lot of coal was burning, a lot of air pollution. And he's capturing that, but at the same time resonating with these colors of warmth and tranquility. You could probably do that same painting and neutralize these colors to the point to where they're so dull and dingy. They could be just almost disturbing where it's icky. But here, he's made these colors look pretty warm. He's made the smog look almost inviting. But this is what he's captured. It's hard to understand and how to capture that, but that's exactly what color theory does. And that's what he's done here using analogous colors in the purples and the cools area. All right, let's take a look at another one. This one here is Rembrandt. This one took 9 years to paint. And this one is called The Return of the Prodigal Son. Now, look at these paintings and look at how it's done. It's done with the browns, but again, remember what I talked about brown being a neutral color. He's using a lot of those browns, but those browns he's mixed. And if you really look deeply into those colors, you'll see that the colors are in the reds, they are pushing into the purples, and there's a little hint of yellows in those here, which create the tan looks. You know, I was told by my professors, and I totally agree with them now, that every artist should at least visit a museum twice a month. Now, that's a lot to be said. But unfortunately, a lot of artists don't visit museums. My favorite museum is the National Gallery of Art, and part of that is because we're not very far from Washington, D.C. But it has a magnificent amount of collections of works that we see through all of our history in the arts. You get up close, you can see the strokes, you can see how they mix colors, you can see how they worked in an impasto style. We'll get into that later. And the smuffata, and we'll get into that later. But these are styles that are used in painting. The main thing is to see how they used analogous, even monochromatic colors, and how they created these emotions and how they were able to capture that. Now, there is a difference between illustration and fine art. Now, you're always going to get like 12 different types of opinions from 12 different artists because it's not set in stone. Oh, and by the way, this first section here is going to be the lecture section. Now, as we get further into our working into the arts, there's going to be times where there's going to be lectures. So this first half is going to be about lecturing, and it's going to be about demonstrating and taking a look at work. Trust me, if you want to skip this part, you're going to be missing a whole lot of information. Don't try to be somebody impatient and say, I don't need to hear all this. I just want to get working on this. In college or anytime you're learning, you have to see what you are trying to achieve. All right, and this is a good example. Here are two works in which I did. This first work here is called Sea Dreamers. Now, the purpose of this was to emote a sense of feeling, tranquility. And that's what I've collected here. Using the blues, using the purples, and even some reds, and using a lot of these colors to create that sense of tranquility and peace and all that other good stuff. Now let's take a look at this one here. This one's a shirt I designed for our rival game, USC and UCLA. My rival school is UCLA. But look at the colors between the two. I mean, what if we switch those colors? What if these bright, vivid colors were here on Sea Dreamers? And what if Sea Dreamers' blues colors were over here? They wouldn't be as effective. You see, using monochromatic colors here, or I should say analogous colors here, is kind of like creating that mood and that feeling. Whereas here, we're trying to create something bold, big, outstanding and get out there and get ready for the game. So this becomes more of an illustration. It's telling you a story, and this one here is becoming more of a feeling and emotion, the fine art side. That's generally the separation between the two. Fine art is going to emote a feeling or capture something, whereas here, we're going to be telling you a story. That's the differences between the two. And of course, using analogous colors will also shift in what you are trying to create. For instance, let's go back to an evening stop. Let's go back here to Starry Night. We can feel this sense of almost peace and tranquility. Let's bring this one in. Kind of dark, huh? Same colors. We're using the same kind of style. But look how disturbing this one looks. Young girl walking through, and you still have this feeling of just, there's something disturbing. There's something not right. It's almost haunting. But yet they're still in the cool sections. Can you see how emotion is starting to change that? And we're going to get into a lot of the kind of art too, which is the dark side of the arts. The darker side of the arts as far as I can say. And those kind of emotions you try to capture and move and push. And that's what's going to distinguish you as a phenomenal artist, to be able to pull and capture these two colors and how they work. All right, let's take a look at another piece of work that I did earlier. Wow, what happened to my voice? This piece here was done way back in the 90s. This was something I had done back in the 90s. Iraq invaded a small country, Kuwait. Now, our president at that time was Bush, had turned around and said, look, you either get out of the country or we're going to attack. Kuwait was a small, little country that couldn't even defend itself. Well, Kuwait had claimed that Iraq was part of their territory. Okay, well, whatever. We're not going to get into the political stuff. The thing was, is they gave them a deadline. The deadline came, and it went, and they didn't leave. So President Bush had the Army and the Navy and Air Force come in and repel. Originally, it was Operation Desert Shield, and then it became Operation Desert Storm. We hadn't seen a battle like this since, Vietnam. And of course, the country was drawn together because we could see a tyranny of governments, government tyranny, just trying to take over a small country. And so it pretty much banded us together. Well, anyway, long story short, what I did is I came up with this here. And at that time, it looked pretty good. Even now, it looked okay. But here was the thing. After looking at this, you can see the colors are too bright. It didn't give that kind of feel. Although this was very successful, this was an image that, as you can see, the colors are too bright, too vivid. And I'm going to show you a reversion, or a remake, if you will, of this. Behold, the new version, Operation Desert Storm. Notice the colors between the two. Now, I do have to say that my skill set has changed quite a bit, but this is also digital. This was done in color pencil. Also remember this. I equate being an artist like being a doctor. No, hang on. I'm not saying that it has to do with medicine. But doctors practice medicine. And the reason they call it practice is because things are changing all the time. There's always something new in science, or something new is developed. A new disease comes out, and they have to turn around. They're practicing how to approach these different sicknesses. Well, not in such a dramatic area. Art is pretty much the same way. In fact, it changes. This drawing was done way before anything such as the iPad had come out or digital art. Everything that we're seeing right now, back in the 80s, is kind of like Star Trek.
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Yeah, exactly like that. These are things that we would have not seen. As a matter of fact, I remember my professor saying when I was in class that he says, one day you're going to have everything in computers and you're going to be able to do everything. Keep in mind, the only time that we had computers were word processors and the little dots at the end, and it came up with little pixels of, you know, things like that. And we were thinking, you're crazy. All the stuff you're seeing now, this stuff that you're seeing right now is advanced back in the 80s. And today we end up using it just like everyday use. So what I'm saying is that in another 20 years, this art is going to be obsolete and there's going to be other things. So you have to be practicing and you have to be learning. And if you want to be on that edge, you're going to have to be able to learn a lot more. But one of the things that is going to be a constant is color theory. Understanding how to use that. You can see here in these two. Look at the difference in the color here, which I've used. Those storm clouds are rather brutal. Here, white fluffy clouds. I hadn't really understood clouds yet or how to work them. You know, this was some 30 years ago. You see, I'm constantly learning. And that's the way you should be. You should be constantly learning and growing and building. Just because you're gifted, just because you might be able to draw even better or even to the level that I'm at in year 18, 19, hey, you can always learn more. You can push yourself in areas you don't feel comfortable in. If you're sitting comfortable in just one little area and what you want to do, you're not going to go very far. Oh, I want to stay here where I feel comfortable doing what I'm doing. Or if you're the type that catches on to things pretty quick and you get frustrated because you're not learning it very well or you're not learning it as fast, stay with it. Trust me, I was like that. And I've seen other artists do the same thing. And you know what happens? They give up. Okay, I'm going off on another tangent, so I'm just going to quit there. But let's get back to these two. You can see the differences between the two on how color works. The analogous colors here are much darker. Now, some of you out there may say, I like this one better because it's a lot brighter. It doesn't seem so gloom and doom. And that's your prerogative. Others would say, no. I like this one better because it really shows the power of a storm coming in and we're going to be wiping you out. Of course, there's several different variations. I take the eagle, for instance. Here on this one, I have the eagle looking up. Here, this one, the eagle's looking down. It looks like it's ready to take off its perch and head out into battle. But we're not talking about design. We're still talking about color. Can you see how everything kind of ties in to change things up? It does everything like that. That's what color does. That's what art is all about. But we're moving into that. Now, what we're going to do is we are now going to go into the studio and start practicing mixing some of these colors. And we're going to try creating something warm. We're not going to do anything representational. Well, maybe using shapes and colors and doing things that are kind of loose and neutralizing these colors and doing what they call quick sketches in the different areas and different genres of analogous colors. It's just to give you an idea how to practice and work on these. You'll eventually start to build and start to work on applying it to things that you want to do. For instance, let's say you're painting a funeral scene. You can create that funeral scene to look very dark, almost like a horror show. You could also go the other direction and make it look very happy, very bright, moving on to a different part of your life, that death isn't the end of life, but the beginning of something new, and make it bright using analogous colors. You can do the same thing with the wedding. You can do the same thing with just about anything using those analogous colors and trying to figure out what kind of mood you're going to shift. You can do it with the same thing with a landscape. Imagine doing this. A scene that is almost in apocalyptic proportions. Well, the first thing you're going to see is a lot of darks, a lot of blues, a lot of browns, and a lot of dreaded colors. Well, what if you turned around and you flipped those colors into something warm? Like yellows and oranges and blues, bright blues, a clear sky. It's almost a contradiction in terms. It's like you have this apocalyptic scene, but now you have all these other things happening around it. Okay, so let's get ready to head over to the... Why do I always get tied up on the studio? And let's go over there and head out and see what we can do there. And that's right, bring our little fellas with us. All right. Beautiful. Yeah! Welcome, my friends. I am Marcus DePaul, international man of emotional creativity. And I can... Oh no. Not again. Today, we're going to go into all the parts of the elements of art to deal with the Marcus. feelings, the love, Marcus. disappointment, all those that are captured. And they... Dude, you're messing with my mojo. We're not talking about emotion. What? We're talking about color. You know, Roberto warned me about this. He told me that I might not get into it. We can't get into emotion until we get into color and they start understanding how to use. We're working on analogous colors. No. You got a point. I see what you're saying. Got to know about the colors. Yeah, I'm really sorry. Yeah, they've got to know about this. Got to know about the analogous colors, how they work, touching emotion, the love, exactly, the stress, the elation, all that. Yes, victory, defeat. Yeah,
Gotta know all that.
You're right, Professor.
Okay.
I see your point.
Thank you,
I do.
bud.
I totally
Thanks.
do.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go hang out with Roberto. We're going to get in touch with our feelings, you know what I mean? And we'll be ready. We'll be really ready to show you what emotion is all about. Roberto, I'm coming over. All right, we're going to suss the depths of emotional parts of the art. You do that. Back to you, Professor. And tell Roberto hi for me. Okay. Woo! We're going to get into the analogous colors. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a Monet as a reference. And we're not going to paint it exactly. We're not trying to paint it. We're just kind of using these kind of colors so that we can get an idea of how to use analogous colors and create a mood or create something. And how to explain this? We're working in these colors, but what we're also trying to do is create a mood. For instance, if you're trying to create a sunset, it's most likely you're going to be using the reds. If you're doing a sunrise, you're going to look more toward the cools, and here's the reason why. When you're working on a sunset, dust, particles, everything have all been kicked up in the air from cars moving, horses running, everything, and they tend to be, so during the end of the day, all those dust particles are up in the air, so they tend to be a little more yellowish, a little more red. In the morning, things tend to be a little more blue, a little more cool. And that's because everything's been settled down. Nobody's been moving around. And so the colors tend to be a little cooler, crisper, if you will. So there is a slight difference between the two. So in this one that we have, which is a sunset that Monet has done, we're not looking at trying to create any kind of detail. And I would express that you try this exercise. Just kind of go through it slowly. Don't rush it. Just experiment with it. Play with it. You don't even have to gesso it after you're done. Once you're done, then go back and rebuild again. This will give you a practice of how to work in a style of being able to build your work up. Okay, enough talking. Okay, I'm using my color palette, and I know it's not clean, but I'm using the same thing. And I have an orange here. I have a brown. I have a red. I have a yellow. And yes, I have a blue and a purple. Now, they are on the opposite end of that color wheel. But I'm going to be using that to neutralize colors. And then, of course, I have my white. Notice I don't have any black. I'm not going to use black at all. We're just going to use the colors to be able to build this. Now, again, we're not trying to create a painting. We're trying to create a mood of a sunset. Okay? All right, so here we go. All right, so first of all, what we're going to do, our base color of this is going to be pretty much of an orange. And I'm going to start off with I'm using a number 6, but I'm going to go to my number 12 because we're using the large white areas of painting here. So let's do that. All right. And I'll come up to my number 6 later. All right, so here we go. All right, so I'm going to start off, and I'm going to start off using an orange. And I'm going to neutralize a little bit of that with some of my blue. So I've brought in my blue, pop that in. And remember, this is not a raw orange. I've neutralized that with some of the blue. Okay. Now my canvas isn't pushed all the way onto my easel, so it's kind of pushing back here. All right. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little more of my blue. And I'm neutralizing that and pulling some of that up here. I'm going to mix some green. And get some greens up in here. Now that green is a split complementary to the orange. What that does is it kind of lends to what we have here a bit, okay? I'm going to get some more green in here. There we go. Push that out here. Look at that. Okay, and then I'm going to come back with my orange, and I'm going to add some yellows. Push that back. There we go. Now, I'm going to pull some more, just a straight raw yellow. Pull that in. I'm going to pull some yellows right here. There we go. Add some fiery yellows here. Now, as I get closer to the horizon, I'm going to take some of this yellow. Here we go. And I'm going to add some tint to that. When you add this tint, that is going to, look at that. Woo! That really pops up that color. Look at that. A little fiery section in the center of this here. It looks at that bright color is just popping up, and I'm going to add a little bit more white to this. That's going to be the center hotspot. Okay. Now I'm going to take some straight red, add just a touch of white to pop that red up. Alright, now watch this. I'm going to add some yellow to this. I want to pop this in with some white. Warm that up. I'm going to take the orange. And my orange right here. Add some more white to that. Lighten this up so I get it nice and hot. There we go. Okay. We have your orange sun there. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to pull this. Pull this orange all the way down here. Add some whites down here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my green. I'm going to neutralize that green. Complement to that is red, right? Okay. Over here. And now I'm going to take some white. Look at that. I'm just going to grade this up. Get my hand underneath here. There we go. And this is called impressionism, meaning that we're not adding any details, we're letting the viewer get involved with the painting. They are getting involved. Now I'm going to this pretty quick, as we're not trying to create any kind of image. What we're trying to do here is we're just trying to manipulate and work color. Now, what I've done is I'm going to the complementary color. That. Graying this up. Adding some white down here to push that back further. All right. now we're going to take our orange. Now in this case, I'm going to add just some raw orange in this area here, like this. Look at that, huh? And now I'm going to come here with my blues, my darker colors, add the complements to that, pop up some darks in here. So I bring a foreground up. And do the same thing over here. I'm going to pull some of my yellows, or excuse me, oranges down here. And this is a color study. I'm going to add some white here to just pop up some highlights in this area here like this. I'm going to pick up some darks in here, here, and right down here. And boom. Voila. Okay? Now, this here, what we're working on, or what I just did, is I worked rather rapidly. It doesn't look anything like a Monet, but I use it as a reference. And here's what I'm going to recommend that a lot of you do, is that you get used to working fast, just like this. This is going to be a contradiction in terms, because when we were talking earlier, when we did the mountains and we talked about that, we did work pretty fast. But I also said that we're not going to, you don't really want to work fast with the painting. Do you remember when we started working, or I started mentioning when we were doing figure drawings and we're talking about quick studies and we're doing speed drawings, 10-second drawings, 1-minute drawings, and how to gesture draw? This is a gesture painting. What this does is it gives you a base to work on and lay out all these colors, and then you can build from that. You can start moving forward. I can continue building on this here. I can keep working on it and building it. And as a matter of fact, when I'm done with this episode, I may hang on to this and then just build onto this a little bit more, adding not too much detail, but just gradually building more. It becomes more exciting, a little more dynamic. Again, the Impressionist paintings that we are all known for, or that we all know, I should say we're not known for, but we're known, is during that period when you had Van Gogh, Monet, Manet, you had all of these artists, Degas. Their art was not accepted because prior to that, art looked photorealistic. That's how they accepted the arts. The Impressionists came in, and the critics thought it was nothing more than just mud, just terrible. As a matter of fact, William Turner, when I showed you his work, one critic said it looked like he had took his canvas and taken a mop to it. They were missing everything about color and how they were trying to just allow the viewer to be involved in that. And that's what this is all about. That's the whole part about understanding Impressionism. Now, you may not like that style. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do. But Impressionism allows you to feel that emotion. We start moving into touching that emotion, that feeling of what we're trying to create. And this is the whole thing about painting just like this. We have a good start. We have a good background here that we're working with. We have a good sunset. And I can pop this sun even more. And as a matter of fact, let's do that. We have some time here. Now that we got this all, I'm going back to my number 6. And now that I've got everything laid out, I'm going to come out and I'm going to add some brighter orange in the center here. I'm going to pop this out. Now, keep in mind, the hardest thing to try to create is heat or light. That is extremely hard to be able to grasp and to make it look like it's glowing. So don't be discouraged. It takes practice to work on that. Okay, and I'm gonna pull this up here. And sometimes you need more white, more of a tint than you think you do. Okay, there we go. There. Okay. Now I can then come in here and take this color and start pulling this down. There we go. The next thing I can start doing now is I can start adding some more, not details, but some more depth in the background. And I'm going to take my green and my red. What is that? It neutralizes the color into a brown, but a dirty kind of brown down here. There we go. But if I want to push that back even more, now I'm going to take my white and I'm going to push that back. To those trees back over here. Now I'm going over this part of the tree. That's okay. I can come back over here and I can rebuild that too. And this is what I'm saying, that you don't just come in and finish a drawing just right off the bat. Now, because I'm looking at an angle, my horizon line's kind of off. So let me see if I can correct that. I'm going to stand in front of the painting here and pull that straight line across just like that. Oh yeah. There we go. Now, add some purple to this. Go with the yellow, neutralize that. Push this over. And build up on that. And you can see as I keep going, I'm going to add more and more to this. All right. This gives you an idea of what to work with in analogous colors. And you can practice with this with just about everything that you have. All right. This is going to conclude this episode of Artifacts. So, as always, may the Lord be with you. Next week, we're going to get into monochromatic colors. Taking one color, mixing and neutralizing, and then pushing that color back and forth. So until next week, you guys take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of Artifacts. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Bum, ba-da-bum, ba.